What I wanted to do was just put up a couple of slides talking about AIT. Really what I wanted to do was look at the definition of AIT. I think, first off, we need a definition. First off, because, a definition really gives us, there we go, understanding. If you don't truly define it, if you don't have an accurate, comprehensive definition, you may be talking cross purposes. 3 little letters can be ambiguous. Once you understand something, you can then measure it. Once you measure something, you can then size the impact to your business. Once you can do that, you can start doing things like mitigation planning, and then you can start to look at the effectiveness of what you've done. So why have we started looking at the definition? Don't we already have this defined? In fact, we have 3 definitions. We've got a GSMA one, an I3 forum one, and we have a MEF one. So, we're not trying to create yet another definition here. That's always the risk. When we start looking, though, at how folks are defining it, we can see that there are actually quite significant differences in the way that everybody is describing it. So that's a set of words. Try to put it onto a picture, and I always think visually on this. So, oops, and I'm really breaking everything there. There we go. So what I thought I'd do is actually draw out the ecosystem. So, we've got brands selling to CSPs to then working through inter-exchange carriers and aggregators, through other aggregators, the terminating aggregators, terminating in mobile operators, and of course, the end users at the end. So first off, we've got probably, I think, the one topic that comes first to mind when people talk about AIT, which is this concept of bot generation. And Mr. Musk nicely got a lot of media attention on that one. So really where somebody is utilizing the brand service itself to generate traffic all the way through. We also have, as the MEF called out, something that we've called counterfeit fabrication, which is where the traffic is actually being generated within the aggregator. So not being generated at the point of the brand, but actually messages are being created at a point in the transit. Also, the MEF has called out this virtual number overpayments. So it's important to look at when we describe these attacks, it's like who's doing it, but why are they doing it and how are they doing it? And sometimes, we get a lot of definition on the who, but not the how or the why. Sometimes there's a lot on the why, but not the who. You really need to have all of those aspects to truly understand what it is, to then work out how can I measure it and how can I see it and detect it. Interestingly, the I3 forum have called out this aspect, which is peer-to-peer AIT, something that's quite often forgotten when we're often thinking about the AIT ecosystem. There's money in this space, there's money in this flow, and this does happen. We've also, with the GSMA, got something which again is quite often forgotten, which is got lots of users out there with smartphones. We know about mobile malware. We know that AIT can be generated by mobile apps. We also know that there's scenarios where there's reselling of connectivity. If we all remember apps like Bazook and many other variants where consumers are told they're paid to install an app that will then use their excess capacity. All of these are types and forms and mechanisms for doing AIT. So you can see why we're now starting to say it's important to capture all of these different points. It's not just this. We've got to think about these full chains. But in addition, it's not just these areas that are currently in the definition. And have I really broken it? There we go. Thanks. Yeah. There are some additional forms as well. I'm going to start with this one in green. I mean, James, you nicely set it up for me. You said AIT, or also known as AGT. I'd actually argue AGT is something legitimate. Who here has not needed to do test traffic generation? It's a critical part of what we do daily to try and work out where is this traffic coming from? What actually is the customer experience? And this is a big, viable business where people are doing test creation of messages to be able to work out customer experience, billing quality, speed of response, as well as where is traffic coming from. So I would argue that AGT is the legitimate agreed form of AIT, not a synonym for AIT. We're also seeing something called insider inflation. Brands themselves want to test their customer experience. Sometimes brands want to appear a little bigger than maybe they actually are. So they will generate messages and traffic themselves to look larger. Technically, it's a type of AIT, but we shouldn't confuse that with the elements of fraud that often come to mind with AIT. Traffic trashing. I mean, you mentioned it there, James, but it's not commonly spoken about in context of AIT. It's not a type of AIT, but it is absolutely critical as an enabler for AIT to ensure it doesn't have that customer impact. And then we're also seeing elements that affect very much the CSP side of things. There's what we're calling masquerade parasite. This is where accounts are emulating other brands. So they may well be legitimate accounts for a majority of traffic, but then they are also generating other brand traffic on their behalf, blending it in amongst all of that other traffic to create additional fake messaging. And then we're also seeing interface hijacking in instances where maybe there's not full security on the point of message creation. So effectively, this again is a form of fraud against the CSP point. So you can see here, there are a number of different types of AIT, and we feel really important to call out all of these because they all have different solutions. I mean, the first key point is you can see if you're sitting here, you will not see that. If you're sitting here, you will not see traffic that's trashed. This is why it's a complex problem that needs, we feel, that extra step down to define. And once you've got that definition, you can then start to measure. Now, we're a little lucky in what we do. We're a firewall company. We are deployed in, well, over 100 MNOs. We're deployed with many of the large CSPs. We get to see a lot of traffic here at the inter-exchange side. So we're able to start to put some numbers on this. But what we'd love to do is to see those definitions expanded and start to gather and accumulate more information with all of the other insights that folks have that we don't see, working with the fraud teams, etc., and really starting to put now a number breakdown. I mean, Nick often talks at Mobile Squared about the overall aggregate size. Now let's start working out of these flows, which is the biggest risk, which is the items that are affecting our business, and then more specifically, what can we start to do to address and mitigate those? So that's why we feel AIT very much for now is a topic that we have to start getting more precise, more defined on. Thanks.
Simeon, thank you very much. I really like that element of AGT. And personally, I'm going to be taking that going forward. That artificial generation traffic is legitimate. So it could be from SIM boxes you deploy across your network for your SMS testing if you're a large aggregator globally. That's a nice definition. I like that. So let's see what other MEF members think going forward as well. So Simeon, if you could take a seat, that would be fantastic. Tim, if you could also join us. Do we have Desh in the room? No, we don't. That means, do you know what? I'm going to think on the hoof here. Who would like to join me on stage? This is a MEF members. Hand up if you want to join us on stage for this session, talking about AIT. Okay. Uku Tomikas, the CEO of Macente. But Uku, I'm going to be strictly limiting your conversation. This guy loves talking about AIT and the topic. I did give all members an equal opportunity, and please never, ever say that. We at MEF are equal opportunity providers. And it really is first come, first served. So don't sit there and go, oh, MEF never chose me. You've got to be in it to win it. So thank you. So we have our three panelists in person, Uku as well. And joining us online, I hope we have Push from Singapore. And Ross, can you help me with the Alt-Tab thing here? Thank you very much. Project manager, content marketing, marketing expert, payments expert, and computer guru. Yes. Yep. Push. Hello.
Hey, good morning. How are you?
Oh, we're all right. Thank you. And good evening. You're in Singapore. Thank you very much for joining us. Absolutely fantastic having Meta part of our event. Could you just introduce yourself, please, Push?
Yeah, I'm Pushpendra Singh. I'm based out of Singapore. I've been working with Meta for roughly 6 years. And before that, I worked with telcos. So I think I have a bit of a mixed background from telcos and ODD word. I currently manage the authentication business globally for Meta and also the business messaging part for telcos. So that's what I do.
Fantastic. So that's rather important. And I can imagine lots of companies in this room and online will have business with yourself. Push, can I just start with you? And let's get straight into it. Why is SMS still important?
SMS is important, and I think it will continue to be important. I think it's one of the easiest way to authenticate users on the platform. Like, it's simple. You just need your mobile number. It works. It's a technology which has been tested with time for years, and it just works at scale. It's easy to connect. Scalability is there, and consumers are used to it. So I think there is a future to it, and with more than 3 billion people on our platforms, we believe that is the best way to authenticate them at this point of time.
Okay, thank you. And so SMS, clearly from your perspective, from the Meta perspective, is important. What is happening out there in the market that is making organizations such as yourself, such as Apple, such as so many others around the world, doesn't matter whether you're huge organizations of massive scale such as yours, or very, very small organizations, or anything in between, but people are looking for, particularly when it comes to two-factor authentication, alternatives. And why is that at the moment?
And this is a pretty interesting question, right? Like, I don't like waking up in the morning and see an SMS price has gone up in the market by, say, 200x or 300x. I think that sometimes happens. And I think that is one of the larger reasons that over the last 2 to 3 years, we decided to invest a lot of time, money, and effort in ensuring that we only use SMS where it's relevantly required. So I think the economics in many markets now completely don't work for us. Like, the price of SMS, like 15 cents, 20 cents, that just doesn't work for us. And I'm sure like it doesn't work for most of the companies anyway at this cost level. I think that is one. Second is, we believe there's a lot of artificial traffic generation which has started happening over the time. Like, there's some markets where this happens at like extent and scale, which also means that we have to develop a lot of machine learning and AI tools to curb that. And I think these type of things, which is like price economics, a lot of fraud happening on the channel, is forcing companies like us and many others to like find other ways of authentication where, which are reliable. And second, there's a price predictability. Like, you would never rely on something where you don't know how much you're going to pay. So I think those are the two biggest hindrances we are facing as an industry. I would believe it's just not about us, but I'm pretty sure it's all the users who want to use it. So I think, and those are the two core reasons. I think if you see the volumes across globally, when we talk to our peers in different industries and even to our partners, like, they have seen a massive decline in volumes. And I think at the current cost levels, that will continue to be a factor and as we move on.
Okay, thank you. Tim, let's bring you into the conversation. You're with Sinch, you're looking after carrier relationships here in the UK and Ireland. You were with a mobile operator before. What's your take on this, both from the MNO angle and now working the other side?
Yeah, so I guess, as you say, MNO background maybe helps me bring in some of the experience where I get that insight as to the blindness sometimes that you might have within an MNO to some of this activity going on. So as Push said, AIT unfortunately does happen, and it happens on multiple global brands. And we've all got our various solutions to try and detect and prevent AIT. I think, like Push said, Meta are in a position where actually they can develop their own tools and their own machine learning to put something in front of all of their suppliers. That's probably quite a unique position. Normally, our clients would be much more reliant on us to do that detection for them. So in that scenario, you've got, to your point of the operator, sometimes the operator knows that it's happening and is struggling to control it, but they get on top of it. There's been one of my operators I deal with recently who had a big problem, robustly addressed it, and have eradicated the problem, which is great. Sometimes the operators, if we're honest, probably turn a blind eye. They don't want to acknowledge that there's a problem because they're then cutting off a revenue stream that they have coming through their business. So And in that scenario, Simeon showed us the different flows of AIT. That would be one where you have a leased number range where the operator subleased the numbers, or they're hosting a number range for someone. It's not in their financial interest to acknowledge that this is a problem, so they may be slow to address it. But then you've got the totally innocent operator scenario, where you may have, and I know we've seen this as Sinch as a business as well. We might be the provider that people use to reach that operator, but further up the chain, someone undercuts us on price. Now, how do they undercut us on price? Well, it's because they're using AIT to generate enough traffic to then short stop and fake delivery receipts back to the enterprise. And they'll say, well, we can sell to you cheaper than Sinch can sell to you to that Sinch destination, for example. We don't know that that's happening. We only get the legitimate traffic. We deliver the legitimate traffic. The operator obviously has no idea that's happening. And their business is then being, let's say, detrimentally impacted. And it's not always an expensive destinations. I do understand exclusivity is expensive destinations bad, but we have some places like Ireland, perfectly reasonable prices. So UK, for example, it's not always exclusives, but it can be, it can kind of damage your reputation, let's say, as an aggregator. And I've made this mistake before of thinking a competitor was guilty of generating AIT because the traffic goes to them, but really it's someone further up the chain.
But that's intentional. That can be intentionally done for reputational damage as well.
I'm sure it's very much intentional to try and frame somebody else and make them look guilty when really.
So then take your enterprise traffic away from you.
Exactly. Yeah, and they're playing the least cost algorithms that some of these businesses run. To make us look guilty.
Fantastic.
To make a lot of money.
Thanks, Desh. You arrived. Good to have you with us. Desh manages the messaging side of the business for Comviva. Comviva is a large platforms provider, messaging platforms, the largest platform provider for payments across Africa as well. So you are based, well, live in Dubai, but Comviva is very much an Indian company based in India, has a lot of business in India and the region, but of course globally. Can you just give us your perspective on this whole issue when you first saw it coming up within your business? And let's talk about India in particular, because it's the most populated country on earth. You are in India, the country that uses blockchain in the largest commercially deployed way, and that is to fight SMS spam and fraud. So give us an Indian perspective if you can.
Yeah, so while we are headquartered in India, but we are pretty much a global company working across the value chain from CPaaS platforms, hubbing, firewalling, penetration testing, etc. But from a technology perspective, and what we see is three essential threats: AIT, flash calls, and the price, the way the commercial deals are happening today with the MNOs and the aggregator. So I think first thing that we see is that AIT as a challenge is more because of the commercial model between the aggregator and telcos. In most markets where you have the single aggregator, that's where the incentive to do AIT becomes much higher than where it is in control of the telcos. So what we are seeing is AIT increasing, in the range of about 15 to 20% minimum in most markets, and going up to 30-40% in some markets. Similarly, flash call in some of the markets where we do penetration testing, we are seeing 50-60% of the messages coming, instead of the SMS channel, coming on the flash calls, right? And obviously the experience is not as great as it would have been with the SMS autofill compared to flash call, where you have to sometimes fill in the number and sometimes it is auto detected. But in either case, the experience is much better if you are able to get the message as an SMS compared to a flash call. So we are seeing that as a trend, and what we do in most markets right now is using the firewall and penetration testing, educate the telco about the issues which are happening in the network. And most of the markets where we are present, we don't see this as a big of an issue, because the way the commercial deals are done in the engagements where we are involved as a technology provider and not as same party which is doing the aggregation and the firewalling, which creates an issue of conflict of interest. And I think that is one of the ways to go, I feel, for an operator to provide clean channel for enterprises and the ecosystem.
Thank you. Now, Uku, you're a late entrant into the show, and you are the CEO of Macenti. Could you introduce Macenti? Who are your clients? primarily? And
So
what
most-
size of companies are they?
Most usually we're talking about mid to enterprise size companies, mostly from the financial services and logistics industries, companies that are very often good, nice prime targets for AIT, companies with a lot of signups, companies with a lot of parcels, a lot of things that you can actually create for trigger points for those particular AIT purposes.
And your clients are being impacted.
Oh yeah, sure. They are being impacted, and we in return are being impacted as well. And we talked about it quite a lot at the start of the year, that if AIT continues in the way that it's continued, also including the price raises that are not really helping AIT or any of the customers really become any less of an issue, then the combination of those has led to a very simple point for a lot of our clients where they start evaluating the cost of conversion. And what happens is, and this is a very practical example from one of our clients that's a major food delivery service, right?
Which country?
They work in 40 different. So
Okay,
their main
so-
target for main countries was, I think it was 6 different exclusive markets where they got hit with AIT attacks, where it was about 30 to 40% inflation in each market.
And those 6 areas were directly just happened to be the ones with the highest, in simple language, the highest message price.
Absolutely. There's a
Direct correlation.
one-to-one correlation to see there. And
Okay.
essentially what they started doing was they started looking at the different points where they use SMS for the purposes of creating conversions, like whether it's on sign up, whether it's on courier sign up, whether it's in different prices. And what they started doing was that where the direct benefit of a conversion is lower than point X, they started scrapping SMS as a tool or replacing with other things. And we've seen this often with other companies as well, where they start looking at what is the conversion, what's the cost of it, compared to what's my actual client lifetime
Cost
value.
benefit analysis. Very simple.
Cost benefit analysis, and every single use case that used to be more on the side of a nice to have and less on the side of absolutely crucial is starting to be cut from the value chain. So what we see is a decrease in use cases for the channel.
Yeah.
And I think that is very, very painful for a lot of businesses because it's decreasing the amount of exposure and different use cases and creativity for the channel, not just overall volumes, not just overall revenue, but the way that it's used.
And it's damaging to the future because we know from whether it's Mobile Squared, Juniper Research, who's with us on our next session, or other industry analysts, we keep hearing repeatedly that the majority of businesses still have not cottoned onto and understand that business messaging is great and actually use it. So of course this negativity is going to put a shield around potential growth, which isn't great.
And it pushes businesses towards alternative channels.
Yeah.
We've seen some of our clients start using email OTPs again. I mean, it's not a good tool. Use rich messaging, use anything else instead of email OTPs. But for them, it's an easier point to continue doing business the same way rather than going to a rich channel for a lot of them. Because if I'm already using email, I can just change the flow.
Can I bring bring you back into discussion? So I know on June the 1st, you changed your commercial model with WhatsApp pricing. And because I was in Sweden running an event that day, I remember that. And practically overnight, that made it was a very, very smart move because it made it that when it came to two-factor authentication, WhatsApp became much, much more commercially advantageous than SMS. Can I just ask, have you seen a big growth in the use of WhatsApp for 2FA since that time?
That's a good question. I think, can I talk about the numbers at this point of time?
I appreciate you can't talk about the numbers. I appreciate that.
Yeah. But I think we are seeing a good traction on two folds. I think, first of all, I think the companies see a long-term stability, and I think that's what they're looking for. And I think the way the product is priced, I think we believe that probably should be the right price. Is it the right price? I think we'll know by course of time as it shapes up. But I think the larger context was like, hey, like if we have to work in like 200 countries, do I need like 600 price points, like international, domestic, and all that stuff? So what we're trying to do largely is like bring some sort of like, okay, there's only like 30 to 40 pricing points across the globe. And, I think we are hearing some good feedback from clients at this point of time. That's what I would say. But I think we're just trying to move in a direction where there's long-term stability, pricing which is affordable, and I think we go from there. Yeah.
Now, can I ask, so in a dream world, where, let's say, the people in this room and online had total control over SMS price, and we could click our fingers and wind back the clock. Beyond what point do you think has actually pushed you, the likes of American Express, who I've been a customer of for 23 years. I've had one of their cards for 23 years. In October, they came out saying they're no longer using A2P SMS for client interactions, apart from 2FA when the app isn't available, et cetera, et cetera. But for everything else, they have moved away from A2P SMS. So clearly, what you're feeling within Meta, the pain in terms of the high commercial models and the price, is being felt by many other large organizations globally as well. Beyond what, if let's put a figure on this, beyond what point do you see SMS becoming unreasonable to use for 2FA? Is it the 5 cent point, the 10 cent point? Can you put a figure on it at all? In general,
that's a good question. So I think that's a good question. Like,
no, I appreciate different countries have different.
yeah.
lots
So I think
but psychologically, you hit a 10, and it's like, whoa, with no one in the world has hit a 10, and that can put whole swathes of people off a whole channel.
So I think double digit is really a concerning number, to be honest with you. I think it's a really concerning number. If you ask me, I think if you go back like 3 to 4 years, I think the pricing at those levels were largely sustainable for most of the organizations, I would believe. I think that was a reasonable pricing. And I think the second thing which we also need to understand is like OTP is just not about an SMS, right? Like it unlocks a massive data usage for the operator. It gives access to a user to plethora of services, right? So I think it's beyond that. So I think if you see the economic side of that model, is it like, okay, I need an SMS to access something, but then there's a massive data usage which comes as a result of like someone accessing that app and stuff as well. So I think there's value created on both the sides of the ecosystem.
That's a super fantastic point, because of course, from an SMS perspective, that gives value to the carrier itself.
Yeah, to the carrier, to the user as well, because they can access a lot of stuff, right? Like most of the content which is largely non-OTP based is great, but I think the content, where that it is your account and stuff, it gives you some sort of sense of security, most importantly, and also a lot of content. So I think 3-4 years back, I think the pricing was largely where, okay, like this seems to be the right pricing and stuff, but yeah, double digit is a red flag, to be honest with you. But again, every market differs. But I think the value we bring as a company to the operators we work with is massive usage of data, which is running in like trillions of dollars of an economy of many telcos and stuff.
Perfect. Does anyone on stage or in the room disagree that if we could just miraculously click our fingers and go back 3 or 4 years and have the pricing, then things would be a lot better? Yeah, I see no hands up. Obviously, I can't see online. Sorry, folks. But you probably stick your hands up. No one disagrees here. Push. You've made an exceedingly good point. Tim, we are very, very close to the close now. In fact, closing right now. Last point. How do we get ourselves out of this mess? Because quite simply, we as an industry created this issue. Mobile operators saw an opportunity, obviously, particularly because of roaming revenues being impacted. We heard from Lank Telecom's voice session yesterday, voice being impacted as well. And we keep forgetting that as well. Roaming impacted, voice impacted. So therefore, an easy target to grab extra revenue is A2P SMS. And then we have a vicious circle going on, because then aggregators meet the price target set by operators, commits for multi-year deals, and we're just stuck in that vicious circle. How do we get ourselves out of it?
Yeah, and just to add to those kind of things that have damaged the revenue within the operators, Apple's RCS announcement for operators, that's bad news. It's P2P revenues being removed, domestic P2P, international P2P. So there's yet another revenue stream being removed from operators. Personal view, but I think it's bad news for operators, that Apple RCS announcement. Therefore, I'm concerned. How do operators regain revenue from messaging if they're losing it on P2P? Who's the target they're going to go for to put up the prices? So I do worry for A2P in that perspective. I would say, on Push's point of the OTP unlocks a use case for the operator where their consumer then needs to use a lot of data, therefore makes that consumer a valuable consumer for the operator. it's a really valid point. I was lucky to have a conversation with a CEO of an operator where prices are quite expensive on their SMS, and he had a very level view because he could see how the different areas of his business were working. And he said, you know, they had been using SMS to effectively tax the likes of Meta, of Google, of whoever else, because they saw that data usage as a really kind of, you know, big expense on their network. They had no other revenue share, no advertising revenue. So they said, we're using SMS to tax them to pay for that data usage. However, if I look at my other business area, I get my subscriber fees and I charge them for bigger packages and they use more data because of these services. So we had that level view of maybe the three of us need to get in a room. So maybe it's, you know, Push, it's Sinch, it's that operator, whatever it is. We all need to sit down and have a grown-up conversation and work out how do we sort this out and have all.
And Tim, if you want that discussion, I think the industry would benefit. Guess who could moderate that discussion?
Well,
Meth would wonderfully would love to do that.
You've got 3 days left or something, James, but Meth can, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I've got like 16 days left to do it.
Sorry, yeah.
Something like that, so before I leave Meth. But thank you. We need to close up now. Desh, final word from you, please.
Yeah, I would say that I think the number one solution is the way the targets are set for the business owners within a telco for this business. I think people need to see the trend of decline and not continue to set targets, unrealistic target for the business owners, and then them doing such deals with the aggregators. I think that's where things start falling apart. And I think they need to look at a more long-term perspective, take things on their own hand in terms of the technology partnerships that they need to make and the right set of targets for the business owners. I think that's where it can make a much bigger impact for the overall ecosystem.
Fantastic. Thank you. Well, it's been a fantastic discussion. Push, thank you so much for joining from Singapore. Oh, questions. Yes, shame on me. I forgot about questions. I'm trying to stick to time, Susan. But fantastic. Have we got any questions in the room? Just take 2 questions in the room. Going. Oh, nearly. It was nearly a case of gone.
Yeah, I'm Mike Bradford from Cineverse. I guess one of the questions is, we talked a lot about AIT for SMS. Do we see AIT affecting other channels as well?
Push, do you want to answer that? Do you see AIT in other channels?
I think I think artificial traffic generation happens in different ways, right? Like, do we see in other parts of our business? Maybe in some of those, but not largely as much. But I think, yeah, it does happen in many parts of our business as well. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So it's not just SMS at all. Okay. Thank you. Any other questions in the room? No? Anything online? Oh, fantastic. That was easy. So Push, thank you very much indeed for joining us. Fantastic being able to have the meta perspective at this event. Tim, thanks for representing the operators as well from your former life. And Sinch, Uku, thanks for stepping in at the last minute as well, representing aggregator from Estonia. And obviously, I would say lots of the small and medium-sized businesses around the world. You've got a great perspective there. Simeon, with your 100+ operators around the world from a protection perspective. Lovely hearing from you. And Desh, with your global perspective too. So thank you very much, folks. And I hope you enjoyed that session. Give him a round of applause. Cheers, Push. Bye.